I was tracking Saturn's rings in my backyard for a live global astronomy stream until my neighbor thought I was signaling aliens and called the cops. What happened next? Even the officers were speechless. Flashing red and blue lights bounced off the walls of my house like a silent alarm. I froze, my hand hovering over the telescope's focus ring. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just capturing the once-in-a-decade planetary alignment for a global live stream, but the sudden presence of two police officers creeping across my backyard said otherwise. One of them shouted, "Step away from the device." Confused, I raised my hand slowly. Device? It's a telescope. The night had started quietly. I'd spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. Cameras mounted, lenses calibrated, satellites aligned. A direct feed was already broadcasting to thousands of students, classrooms, and amateur astronomers worldwide. My laptop displayed real-time chat messages in multiple languages: India, Germany, Brazil, Australia. They were all watching the stars with me. Until she struck. Karen, my next-door neighbor with binoculars sharper than most people's morals, had spotted something unusual from her upstairs window. Glowing lights, a motorized rig, and wires snaking across the yard. Instead of asking a question, she made a call. Not to me. To the police. From her bedroom window, she watched the scene unfold like it was a Netflix drama. Her arms were crossed tightly against her chest, phone clutched like a weapon. Earlier that day, she'd already stormed over once, demanding to know why military-looking equipment was being assembled so close to her property. I tried to explain it was for an educational live stream. She scoffed and said, "No one needs to see Pluto that badly." Then she stomped off. Now here we were, under the stars, with two officers standing between me and the largest celestial broadcast I'd ever hosted. My heart pounded, not because I was afraid of being arrested, but because I knew I might miss the exact window when Saturn's rings would pass behind Titan. A shot no amateur telescope had captured live before. "I need you to explain what this is," said one of the officers, shining his flashlight into the scope. "Is this recording the neighborhood?" I bit back frustration. It's a telescope. It's pointed at the sky. I'm live streaming the planetary alignment to schools around the world. One of them raised a brow. Live streaming. I gestured to the laptop sitting on the patio table, showing the live feed. Comets flooded the screen. "Saturn looks amazing. Can you zoom on the Cassini division? Greetings from Sao Paulo." The second officer leaned in, blinking at the screen. "You're not kidding." "No, sir. I'm part of a global initiative. I'm feeding visuals into an international classroom network. We've been planning this for months." Then came a shrill, familiar voice from behind the fence. "He's lying. That thing could be tracking us." Karen's silhouette appeared at the property line, phone held high, recording everything like she was about to post it on her Facebook HOA group. "That is not a normal telescope. It moves on its own. It could be surveillance." I exhaled slowly. The telescope did move. It was robotic, synced with celestial coordinates. But I doubted she'd understand that. One officer turned toward her and calmly asked, "Ma'am, did you see him doing anything suspicious?" She hesitated, then snapped, "It's suspicious enough to point that thing at the sky all night." "What is he watching?" "Aliens." The other officer chuckled softly before catching himself. "Ma'am, this appears to be a scientific live stream." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Well, I want it shut down. I don't want any space signals messing with my Wi-Fi." I blinked. "It's optical. It doesn't transmit anything." Karen didn't respond. She turned and walked off muttering, "You'll hear from the HOA." I turned back to the telescope. I was seconds away from losing the shot. "Do I have your permission to continue?" I asked. The officers looked at each other, then nodded. "As long as you're not invading anyone's privacy, you're fine." I leaned in and adjusted the focus. The image sharpened. Saturn's rings gleamed. Above me, the sky stretched wide and silent. But down here, Karen was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the HOA titled "Community Concerns Regarding Nighttime Activity." I didn't even have to open it to know who had filed the complaint. Karen wasn't just upset. She was launching a full campaign. I stepped outside to pack away the telescope equipment before the afternoon sun hit it directly. That's when I noticed her across the street, talking to two other board members near the community bulletin board. Her hands were moving wildly, and she kept pointing at my house like I had constructed a missile silo instead of a science rig. I tried to stay calm. I had no reason to hide. The live stream had gone beautifully after the police left. We'd captured Jupiter, Saturn, and even Uranus with enough clarity to get picked up by a national astronomy channel overnight. Emails were flooding in from teachers and parents around the world thanking me for the free access. But Karen had made up her mind that I was the neighborhood threat. By late afternoon, flyers started appearing taped to doors around the block. They had photos of my telescope, zoomed in and heavily filtered with captions like, "Is this spy tech on your block? Say no to unauthorized surveillance." I stared at one of the flyers, stunned. She had edited the images to look ominous. My equipment, which was literally pointing skyward, now looked like a weaponized drone base. I knocked on my neighbor James's door. He was a retired Air Force engineer and had waved at me during the stream the night before. "Did you see this?" I asked, holding up the flyer. He chuckled. "Karen, yeah. She thinks the moon landing was staged too. Don't let it get to you." I tried brushing it off, but that night things escalated again. As soon as I began setting up the gear for another session, I noticed a figure hiding behind one of the hedges. A phone screen glowed faintly in the dark. Karen. She was recording me again. I ignored her and focused on the feed. Tonight, I was coordinating a segment with a group of high school students in Argentina who were tuning in for their final astronomy project. The telescope was locked in on Mars, with the polar ice caps clearly visible. The chat on my stream exploded with excitement. "Is that the red planet? Whoa. I can see the white caps. This is better than my school lab." Karen stepped out of the shadows. "Who are you talking to now?" "Foreign governments." I turned slowly. "It's a science class in Argentina." "Sure," she said, filming again. "Looks more like you're broadcasting our neighborhood to other countries." "That's a privacy issue." "I'm calling the police again." "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about safety." "You think this is just about stars? You could be sending images of our homes, our families, to anyone." I didn't respond. I just gestured toward the laptop screen, which now showed a real-time annotated map of the Martian surface. The live comments proved it. Students were learning, asking questions, participating. No hidden agenda, just space. 10 minutes later, the same two officers showed up again. One looked mildly amused, the other tired. "She called again," the first officer said. "Claims you're transmitting neighborhood footage internationally." I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. "This is the live stream," I said, scrolling through the playback. "At no point is my telescope aimed below the sky. There's no footage of the street, no recording of any home." The second officer leaned in and studied the visuals. "Is this Mars?" "Tonight, yes. Yesterday, we tracked Saturn's rings. Tomorrow is the Andromeda Galaxy." They exchanged glances. "We can't stop you from using a telescope," the first one said. "Frankly, this is incredible. But we need to ask you to document your purpose and share it with the HOA to ease their concerns." "Already done," I said, handing them a printed outline of the global stream schedule with partner institutions listed. They glanced through it, nodded, and left. From across the street, Karen stared from her porch. She didn't speak this time, but her eyes told me she wasn't done. As I returned to my setup, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something worse. It wasn't just annoyance anymore, it was obsession. The sky, at least, was peaceful. Mars shimmered red in the distance. And down here, my neighborhood had officially become the launch pad for a battle between curiosity and paranoia. The next day, I woke to a noise that sounded like metal scraping pavement. I looked outside and saw Karen dragging a folding chair across her driveway, parking herself at the edge of her yard like a Border Patrol agent. A pair of oversized binoculars hung around her neck. She had a legal pad in her lap and a thermos of coffee beside her. She was staking me out in broad daylight. I went about my business, pretending not to notice. I figured if she wanted a show, I'd give her a front row seat to the most boring day of telescope maintenance ever. No live streams, no alignment, just lens cleaning and cable checks. But the night was another story. That evening's stream was a milestone. A group of astrophysicists from Germany had requested my help capturing specific asteroid belt patterns to sync with their ongoing research. I was beyond honored. My backyard had officially become part of a multi-continent research network. Right after sundown, I began setup. The sky was clear. The telescope tracked like clockwork. And within 30 minutes, over 9,000 viewers had joined the live stream. In the corner of my eye, I spotted Karen's silhouette shifting in her chair. She stood up, grabbed her phone, and started pacing. I couldn't hear her, but I didn't need to. Her posture said everything. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, the police were back. Same officers. They didn't even knock this time. They just walked around back and stood beside me like coworkers who'd already seen it all. One of them rubbed his eyes. She says you're in contact with unidentified networks. I exhaled and turned my laptop so they could see the stream. These are the unidentified networks, I said, pointing to the chat window. A live comment rolled in, "Greetings from Nairobi Observatory." Another, "We're showing this to our Year 12 class in London." I clicked open a folder on the desktop. Here's the list of institutional partners, live stream licenses, IP address logs, timestamps, whatever you need. Everything's been documented. The second officer smiled slightly. "You really do have fans worldwide, huh?" Just then, a voice on the stream called out in a thick French accent. "We'd like to thank our friend in the States for providing such crystal clear views tonight. Say hello to our students." I chuckled and waved at the camera. "They're live right now." The officer stepped forward, looking into the telescope himself. He pulled back a moment later, wide-eyed. "I can see it. It's moving across the belt. It's a near-Earth object." "Unnamed so far," I said. "We're tracking its speed and comparing it to last year's pass." From across the yard, Karen's voice interrupted the moment. "You brainwashed them too?" She stood near the hedge, filming again, visibly frustrated. "They're falling for it. All of them. This is probably some kind of scam, some tech cult." The officers turned toward her. One of them raised a hand. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the live stream, verified international partnerships, and see no evidence of wrongdoing. He's within every legal right to operate his equipment." She didn't flinch. "You're being fooled. That telescope could be doing anything. He's live streaming planets." The other officer replied calmly. "It's not even pointed at Earth." Karen looked like she wanted to argue more, but the growing group of neighbors gathering nearby made her pause. People had begun to trickle over, curious after the last few police visits. Now they were watching the scene unfold like a stage play. Someone whispered, "Is that guy famous or something?" Another replied, "My nephew's school in Toronto is watching his stream tonight." Karen's expression shifted. Her eyes darted to the crowd, the equipment, the laptop screen showing thousands of active viewers. The narrative she'd built around paranoia and control was collapsing under the weight of facts she couldn't bend. Still, she wouldn't back down. She turned away without another word and stormed back into her house, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the fence. One officer laughed softly. "She'll call again." "I'm sure," I said, adjusting the telescope. But the sky doesn't care. The stream continued. The comments came in faster than I could read. New countries, new students, new voices. The screen felt alive. And for the first time, so did this tiny backyard in a quiet neighborhood that suddenly didn't feel small anymore. The HOA meeting wasn't optional anymore. A formal letter arrived that morning, stamped and slipped under my door, inviting, "No summoning me to the monthly board meeting to address ongoing neighborhood concerns regarding nighttime surveillance equipment." I sighed. I knew exactly who had written it. Karen's handwriting was faintly visible on the envelope. That night, instead of setting up the telescope, I sat in a room with folding chairs, stale coffee, and 6 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Karen sat directly across from me at the table, arms crossed, her smile tense and victorious. A few neighbors were present too, curious onlookers who had started watching my streams, or Karen's drama, depending on who you asked. The HOA president, an older man named Frank, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "We'd like to give both sides a chance to speak tonight. Karen, you initiated the concern. You may begin." She stood dramatically, like she was about to deliver a closing argument in a courtroom. "Thank you. I just want to say that I'm not against science. But what's been happening in our neighborhood is not science, it's secrecy. We've had police at the same address 3 times. I've witnessed machinery that moves on its own. Glowing lights. Broadcast at all hours. How do we know what's really going on?" Murmurs fluttered across the room. Karen leaned forward, voice sharp. I'm not trying to stop anyone from looking at stars. I just don't want to be watched in my own home. She sat down, satisfied with herself. Frank turned to me. Would you like to respond? I stood calmly and opened my laptop. I connected it to the projector in the room. The screen lit up with a live interface from the stream. This is the telescope interface, I said. It's robotic, yes, but it's tracking celestial coordinates that are public knowledge. Every night, I provide visuals for classrooms, observatories, and science groups around the world. I do not record our neighborhood. I do not aim the equipment at homes. Everything is documented. Transparent. I flipped through screenshots, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, the moon's surface. Then emails, thank you notes from teachers in Brazil, Norway, Ghana. Photos of kids holding up printed screenshots from the stream. This isn't surveillance. It's education. A silence settled over the room. Karen scoffed. How do we know those aren't fake emails? How do we know this isn't some elaborate stunt for attention? Frank held up a hand. Karen, let him finish. I've even received national attention now, I continued. Next week, I'm scheduled to appear on a live stream panel with scientists from UCLA and the European Space Agency. They're acknowledging our backyard as a verified point of live observation. Not just me. This community. A woman in the back raised her hand. My niece in Boston saw the Andromeda stream. She texted me that night. Said it was the coolest thing she's ever seen. Karen stiffened. Another voice, my son's teacher, pulled it up in class. She had no idea it was from our town. Frank looked between us. I think we've heard enough. He turned to Karen. With respect, there is no violation of policy here. No laws are being broken. No one's privacy has been invaded. We've reviewed the footage. We've talked to the officers. This is not a threat to the neighborhood. Karen's face darkened. I move that we formally recognize the stream as a community educational project, Frank continued, and support its continuation under the condition that no residential areas are filmed. The motion passed unanimously. Except for Karen, of course. She stood up red-faced. You're all blind. You think it's harmless now, until your Wi-Fi starts acting up or strange cars show up on your street. You'll regret siding with him. She stormed out before the meeting ended. As the doors slammed behind her, the room remained still. Then someone quietly clapped. Then another. I didn't know what to do with that. Later that night, I set up the telescope again. I hadn't missed the stream. In fact, I started it early. This time, I opened with a wide shot of the telescope setup and gave a shout out to my neighborhood. I told the global viewers about the meeting, about how we turned skepticism into support, about how a tiny corner of the world could be part of something much, much bigger. In the live chat, someone wrote, "Wish our town supported things like this." Another, "Tell your neighbors they're heroes." The stars above shimmered with that same familiar stillness. But for the first time in weeks, everything below them finally felt calm. Except maybe one porch light that flicked on across the street. Karen was still watching. I didn't think I'd see Karen again. After the HOA meeting, she seemed to vanish from her usual patrols. No more flyers on doors. No more phone in hand recording my driveway. The folding chair on her lawn disappeared. Her porch light stayed off, but her silence felt more ominous than her shouting. I kept up the astronomy streams. The viewership grew faster than I could track. An Australian science program featured the footage we captured of an unusual comet tail. One of my live streams hit over 100,000 viewers during a lunar eclipse. A science magazine mentioned the unexpected rise of a suburban observatory in a small American neighborhood. Still, part of me kept glancing toward Karen's house, waiting. 2 weeks later, it happened. I was wrapping up a broadcast. Saturn had just drifted past the horizon when I heard a soft knock at the back gate. I walked over and opened it cautiously. It was Karen, not yelling, not filming, not even standing tall, just there, holding something. "I need to talk," she said quietly. I nodded and stepped aside. She didn't come all the way in, just enough to stand beneath the edge of the telescope's shadow. She looked at the rig, then at the laptop, then at the sky. "This is real," she said. I didn't reply. I watched the whole stream. I've been watching all of them. I even saw the one with the eclipse last week. You showed the shadow crossing the moon like it was a movie. Her voice cracked slightly. It was beautiful. I took a breath, unsure of where this was going. Why did you come here? She looked down at the folder in her hands. My niece. She's in middle school. Her parents work late. I've been helping her with science homework. She found your stream. She didn't know it was me who tried to shut it down. She just kept talking about how cool it was that some astronomy guy was giving her class access to the stars. She handed me the folder. Inside were printed screenshots of the stream, annotated, underlined, circled in red ink. Notes, homework, diagrams. She got an A on her last project. Because of your video, I looked up at Karen. Her eyes were glassy, not angry, not proud, just honest. I still don't understand all of this, she said. But I was wrong. The wind moved softly between us. No cars, no noise, just the faint whir of the telescope tracking the empty sky. Karen turned to leave. Before she stepped through the gate, she paused. If you ever want help handing out flyers for your next stream, I know how to get people's attention. I laughed gently, the first time I'd done that in weeks. She walked away. That night, I began the stream a little differently. I turned the camera briefly toward the edge of the yard, not showing any houses, just a glimpse of the fence line, and I said, even the stars can't shine without the darkness. The comments rolled in. Did something just happen? That was deep. You okay? Sounds like a story behind that. There was. But not all stories have to be explained. Some just resolve. Over the next month, something changed in the neighborhood. Not suddenly, but steadily. More kids came by to ask questions. A high school science teacher invited me to speak at a local workshop. One neighbor even brought me homemade cookies with little star-shaped sugar sprinkles. And one evening, I spotted Karen walking her niece down the street. They stopped briefly in front of my yard. She pointed up at the telescope. Her niece waved. I waved back. Sometimes we think our neighbors are just obstacles. But sometimes they're just confused people trying to protect a world they don't fully understand. Fear turns to anger. But knowledge, if you let it, can do something else. It can quiet a war before it starts. Now every stream begins with a simple message across the screen, broadcasting from one small backyard to every big dreamer in the world. The stars are still the same. But everything else, it's brighter now. Even Karen's porch light stays on.